What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the channel, or if you're new, welcome to the channel. I'm very much excited for this. We're going to be talking about Baldurs Gate 3. There's a couple things we're going to be covering in this. Mainly, we're going to be discussing Baldurs Gate itself, the game, things you know, what's going to be coming up. And the other part is some information, not so much information, some critique, shall we say, that has come to light within the last few days. That is kind of intriguing, and I just want to discuss it. So, yeah, that's pretty much the things we're going to cover. It's all tied into Baldur's Gate itself, but it's two different sides of it. Before we do that, though, just an invitation, shall we say, that we, of course, stream on the channel as well. We're going to be streaming Baldur's Gate when it comes out, so if you are new, please do feel free to hit that subscribe button and join us in the streams. To others who have been here for a while, of course, you know, it's hit that like button, do all the usual things you do for me. And of course, if anyone is unaware because they haven't been in the streams, we do have memberships now. We are allowed to do that if you want to support us, but of course, you all know I'm perfectly happy with you hanging out with us and just being part of the channel. That is all I ask for. Let's jump into the actual purpose of this video, which is Baldur's Gate. Now, Baldur's Gate is going to be this big grand RPG. We're going to be playing a lot of it. It's, according to the way they've described it, the golden path, which I assume is the most direct route from start to finish, will take you 80 hours to complete. That is not taking into account the side quests and whatnot that you have. So it's going to be a fairly substantial one. And we've got a few notes and things that they have talked about. So the game itself is supposed to be a big story. It's a Dungeons & Dragons property. So, of course, it's going to be an experience of how you play through it. And there'll be lots of branches, different ways, how this can go, how this can end. It's like a tree, basically. It's got a lot of different branches that you can go down because that's what the purpose of it is. But it doesn't change the fact that there's 174 hours of cinematics in this game. And there is more than 3 times all 3 Lord of the Rings books combined worth of cinematic dialogue. And there's something like 2 million lines of script throughout the game. Like, they're going to town on this. They're making sure that this is going to be a great fucking experience for us to play. And because it's D&D, you're going to have a lot of players who I assume have got like a go-to character. This is me when I play with my friends tabletop. And they're going to be able to make it come to life. They're going to be able to build this character how they want, how they've always envisioned it in their head. They've built in 11 races for you to choose from. And within that, there's 31 sub-races. So, like, the Dragonborn's got, like, 10 different types of Dragonborn. Because there's, like, different types of dragons. There's, like, red dragons and blue dragons and green dragons and, I don't know, rainbow-colored dragons. I don't know. But there's a lot of things to choose from, this customization. And they've refined the character creation screen so that you can change hairstyles. You can adjust how your horns look for the appropriate class. Eyes, skin tone, skin blemishes, like freckles, things like that. Change your age. Effects like vitriol? Vitriol? That's not the right thing. Vitriol. The thing where you basically got the depigmentation of patches of skin. Effects like that, so you can create a character to look however you want to. And unlike a lot of games where you then, you know, like Cyberpunk, where you spend hours deciding how long you want your penis to be in the mirror, and then you never actually see your own character. You're actually going to see the characters here. And there's going to be a lot of dialogue and stuff that you'll see. So there's a point to taking the time to make your character look how you want your character to look. And they've then created that there's going to be a multi-class system. So, you know, they've gotten rid of the attribute requirements. A lot of the time it's like mages require intellect, warriors require strength and constitution, priests and clerics and stuff need wisdom, rogues need dexterity. And when you multi-class, you kind of have to have like a minimum requirement. They've gotten rid of that, so you can play however you want to. I assume the spells and things that come with will then require those attributes. Like, there's nothing stopping a thief mage knowing a few spells. He might not be the brightest though, so his magic skills might not be great. But he should still be able to learn a couple spells here and there, right? Which I think is something they're taking kind of from Divinity 2, where the stats improved it, but was not a requirement for you to use the spells. Not until some of the more advanced ones later. I think it's 12 classes and then 46 subclasses. Over 600 spells for you to work with. And they've got 308 passive feats. Talents, basically. There's always talents. So that's the stuff there that you're working with throughout the game. You've got like 600 spells, 308 talent points to work with. You've got 12 different classes on 11 different races. And then on top of that, with all the dialogue and stuff, there's 2,000 people within the game for you to go and interact with. And each one reacts differently depending on what race and class you are. So if you rock up to them as a half-orc, they might tell you to fuck off. Because they don't like orcs. They might have a quest. They might have a whole storyline. But you're an orc. So leave. And then you can go rock up to them as a human and you're the best thing ever. And it's like, hey pal, have I got a job for you? I have some spiders in my house that need cleaning out. Go clear them for me. I'm looking at you, the original Baldurs Gate. Don't think I've forgotten that quest. I haven't. Never. But it means there's a lot of playthrough, a lot of replayability with it. And me and Steve are going to be playing through this together. He is intrigued by it. He is looking forward to it. He hates turn-based, but that sounds like a him problem, so it'll be okay. We're going to be playing through it multiplayer. And multiplayer is an option for 4 players. You can go play it all with your friends. Or you can do couch co-op. Something that seems almost like a dying art nowadays. But couch co-op is an option. Online co-op is with 4 people. So me and Steve will be playing it. And you basically share everything. You'll share inventory screens. You can set them separately if you don't trust your friends. So Steve will probably be setting his separately. And you can adjust things like how much information is shared, whether or not you see each other's cutscenes, whether or not you see each other's conversations. And if you have it that you can interact with each other during the conversations, you can vote on which option is taken. So I'm hoping that means we might get to reenact some of our fun from Old Republic, where we had me as a Jedi and Steve as a Dark Jedi, fighting over what answers we basically gave to people of, you know, help me, Master Jedi. I require help. Of course, citizen. Anything to assist. And then Steve next to us immediately after, because he won the role, going, but only if you pay us. That's how it works here. Like, I have someone that I need to stop bothering me. Of course, citizen. I will talk to him. Or maybe we'll just straight up kill them. It was a lot of fun. And we had no idea how it was ever going to go, and it made no sense with half the conversations. And yeah, it was like dealing with someone that had multiple personalities. It'd be really fun for this to happen. Because with RPGs, you've got the decision making is kind of what's fairly important. If you look at my favorite RPG series of all time, which is the Knights of the Old Republic, even that morality choice was a light side, dark side thing. It was just, are you going light as a Jedi, or are you going to play Sith? That's it. But life is not black and white. It tends to be more grey in a lot of places, and you shouldn't necessarily have a decision that is inherently good or evil. It should be the circumstances and things like that. And it sounds like Baldur's Gate are going to go for the direction of, you make a decision, there's a consequence to that decision. It's not necessarily a good consequence, it's not necessarily a bad consequence. It is just a consequence. It is an outcome, and you will see how that then affects your overall story. That's a great way to do it, because decisions aren't just good or evil. So you've got this nice branching vagueness as you play, which will then adjust it. And there's apparently a ludicrous number of endings to this game. So there's a lot of different ways to get the game finished. They've been in early access for a decent length of time as well, and the early access period was, we will let you play Act 1. Here you go. Get a taste of the game, see what you think, and then that's it. With the full release coming out in a couple of weeks, it's been revealed that Act 1 is less than 25% of the game. A quarter or a fifth of the game is just Act 1, which means there's a decent amount of time for you to be playing with this game. But since the early access came out, they have actually added about an extra third of content into Act 1. So it means that any early access save file that you have is not applicable in this game. You've got all these people to talk to, you've got all this stuff that you can do, all this stuff you can experience, and they've done a lot of work into how it looks, how the people act, how the city looks. So Baldur's Gate itself is now completely open. You can wander through Baldur's Gate and just experience a fully breathing, living city. Unlike previously, where it was sectioned off and there was only a few NPCs, because that's what the technology allowed in 98. The people themselves are also going to react to how you speak, as we talked about with the reaction to the different races, and they're going to react to what you've done as you get there. There will be hushed whispers in the corners of your great deeds of heroism, and also mockery at your failures, because you're not going to guarantee success in everything. So if you succeed, fail, they're going to be talking about it, but there's going to be ways that you can influence that to change it. So you're going to be experiencing a full, living, breathing world with all this different combat and events and player choices for you to work with. And I'm kind of hoping they're going to go down the route that they did with Divinity. I played Divinity 2, and it was a great game. It was genuinely a great game. And when you're picking your character, you can make your own character, which is what I'm going to be doing. Because I'm not going to play an RPG to use a pre-made character. I want to use my own character. But you can take what they're calling origin characters, which I think it's the same thing as Divinity 2, but basically it's pre-made characters with their own backstory and their own shit to deal with. So, me and Steve will play, just like me and Gwen play through Divinity 2. Means that you can take 2 people to play with you. So when me and Gwen played, we took the Red Prince and we took Fane. And that created a really fun thing that I hadn't experienced in another RPG, which was we were dealing with the main storyline. We were going after the whole source thing and, you know, trying to become the god. But as we were doing that, Fane was also trying to do that, whilst discovering what the hell happened to his people. And the Red Prince was trying to do all of that, whilst also trying to find out what the hell was up with the assassination attempts on his life. So as you were playing through the story, you were dealing with the main story, plus all your side quests, plus their baggage. So I'm kind of hoping they'll do the same thing, given that it's the same studio, because I actually really like that dynamic, that I can play through it. Me and Steve will have this main story. There'll be side quests from villagers going, help, help, bandits, which will of course go and tidily take care of, then loot their house and steal all their gold. But we'll also have 2 people with us who are like, by the way, see whilst we're on our trip here, can we make a stop over here? Because that was the thing that existed in Baldurs Gate as well. So they had their own little quest, but it was very much one quest. Once you'd done that, you were done. It was a little side thing. The origin characters of Divinity, they had their own storyline, not their own quest that you got to partake. So we got to, you know, deal with the House of Shadows. We got to witness some sort of weird lizard sex scene. That is actually a video on my channel. Later, like way earlier, me and Gwen had to watch that, and it was fucking weird. It was back in our early days of Twitch. But yeah, so there's all this stuff that I'm kind of hoping they're going to go for. With that being said, get into the second part of the video, which is talking about this drama aspect, is that a gentleman who works as the head development for an indie studio posted some tweets. A series of tweets talking about how Baldur's Gate is an anomaly, not the new standard for games. Apparently it's because they had a long development time. They've been developing this game since about 2016, 2017, so they've had plenty of time to be able to do it. They've had 2 previous successful titles to draw from, namely Divinity and Divinity Original Sin 2. 2 successful games that they're allowed to import, or able to import a lot of their mechanics to make things work with this. Stuff that's kind of, it's a similar style of game that they can make work. They had a successful early access period, totaling about 2 years, where they were able to get player feedback, bug fix, as well as get a revenue stream from anyone who supported the early access period. They have a development studio of about 400 people, which is a bit larger than most, and they managed to get a property like D&D to work with. So he's saying that it's unrealistic to expect this, as gamers, to expect this to be the new standard of games, and that it is in fact an anomaly and this will not change anything. Now, this man's perspective is reasonable point of view. from the standard of an indie developer. An indie developer does not have access to 400 people. They probably don't have access to a property like D&D. Can they afford to spend 6 years in development? Probably not. Can they spend 2 years just in early access? Probably not. It's a valid point for him to bring up. It becomes a lot less valid when you consider AAA titles. Right? And the unfortunate thing is, whilst this gentleman has turned around and made this point, made his posts, he's made some videos in response to others, which were explaining about how, no, we should not then just assume that everyone's going to be absolute shit behind that, and that it will improve, and different stuff like that, and when it comes to monetary values for what companies can lose, and things like that. What he doesn't address, though, is the notion of the AAA studios that responded to Larian's success, basically saying that this is Rockstar nonsense level scope. That this is too ambitious, that won't work. And it's odd coming from people like Ubisoft and Activision, things like that, who are big studios, who have access to all these people, who have the money to be able to run an early access period, who have the money to develop a game for several years, and failed to do so. I thought the point that I find particularly good is that the reason this is an anomaly, not a new standard, is because they have access to an intellectual property like D&D. Like EA didn't have an IP like Star Wars. I mean, Squadrons, Battlefront 2, those games should have been new standards. The original Star Wars games on PC and stuff were flight sims. It was X-Wing, it was TIE Fighter, it was X-Wing Alliance, it was X-Wing versus TIE Fighter. They were some of the first games that you got as a Star Wars fan playing in the ships. And with all the technology that exists nowadays and all the advancements in gaming, you release Squadrons that could have been a new standard for that type of thing, and you bottled it. Battlefront and Battlefront 2. The shooter genre is one that exists constantly. People are always looking for a good FPS, and Star Wars fans would flock to Battlefront. The original 2005 Battlefront shows that people loved that game. And you got it wrong. You got it so wrong that you spent so long having to fix it that by the time you fixed it, you should have then turned it into greatness. Like, sorry, we got this wrong, here's this new update. By the way, with the success of Clone Wars and Mandalorian, we're going to continue adding new content to it. Instead, you turn around and focus on Battlefield, and we all know how that went. It doesn't work when you then apply those same points to a AAA title. There's no way you can tell me that EA couldn't spend 6 years making a game. Instead, they release a new sports game every year and expect the quality to be better. Ubisoft copy and pasted most of its Assassin's Creed games. It found a formula that worked and just ran with it. And people loved, for example, Black Flag. There was only one, but they copy and pasted a lot of different other ones. And then they got to Origins because people were starting to catch on. It was the same thing. They made new Origins game. Everyone went, this is amazing. So they copied it into Odyssey, then into Valhalla. And they only changed a couple of things. It's an odd thing to be saying, which shows almost like AAA titles don't know what gamers want. Because they're claiming that Larian is a fluke. It's a freak thing. It's not going to be the standard. It's too grand, it's too big, they won't be doing it. Which just comes across as being butthurt that you didn't come up with the game first. Or that you couldn't have made as good a job as this. So if you can't make it as good, then the next best option is, let me just scathingly go at it. I get this guy's point of view from an indie studio. You can't expect indie studios to compete with that. But right now, we don't expect indie studios to compete with that. The guy that made Stardew Valley was by himself. And it's a very successful game that did really well. But there's no way you would expect that to compete. The guy that produced RimWorld, I fucking love RimWorld. That's one of my favorite games. That guy couldn't compete with Ubisoft. Couldn't compete with CD Projekt in trying to make like an RPG. But he can make something like that by himself. We don't expect indie studios to produce something of this scale. Because you don't have it. We do expect AAA studios to produce something like this. And they're also some of the ones that are turning on Larian, saying that this is ridiculous to be making something like this. It's too ambitious. It's too much. And it's like, it's too much because it's making you look bad. People did the same thing with Elden Ring, right? I never played the Souls game, but everyone who's played that game has nothing but good things to say about it. Like, if you're into that. Like, I didn't play the Dark Souls game because they aren't my kind of game. But people who are into that fucking love Elden Ring. And it was objectively listed as being one of the best games. Don't get me wrong, I think the data gets a little bit skewed when it comes to things from software. They do seem to be one of these ones that everyone's immediately like, it's great, it's fantastic. But the game was still very well made. It doesn't matter what the player base thinks. The awards and things that went to it, it cleaned up, didn't it? Like, they did the same thing though. People went after it of how it was made, how it was, that it was too much. And it, as I said, it creates this interesting look of, do game companies know what gamers want? Is that a thing? Do they understand that gamers want a good game? They want something fun to play? Like, Bethesda is releasing Starfield. I'm skeptical as to what it'll be, but I'll still be playing it because it's an RPG and I like RPGs. But they released Skyrim, and they turned around with the new Elder Scrolls and stuff like that and said that the games they were making, they wanted it to last a decade. Mate, Skyrim didn't last a decade. Skyrim is aged. And I don't mean that like it's an older game now. I mean Skyrim is aged. It is not a good game by today's standards. The stuff is all copy and paste. The RPG elements are okay. The reason that game has lasted 10 years has nothing to do with Bethesda. Releasing the special edition, then releasing the anniversary edition, it has nothing to do with Bethesda. It's the modding community. It's the players, it's the fan base that have made that game what it is. They released a few DLCs that at the time they were very good, and the game was very good when it came out. And the game is still fun to go back to, but if you look at it by today's standard, it's like going back to the original Battlefront 2 after playing this Battlefront 2. It's fun to play, but it is not anywhere near the same league. The reason that game has lasted so long, and the reason that the next Bethesda one will last so long, is because you will have hundreds of thousands of people making mods that give you a Star Wars overhaul, they give you a texture overhaul, that add in extra quests, that let you do this, that let you do that, that changes everything. That means you can have a completely different playthrough every time you play it. That has nothing to do with Bethesda. And that's where the problem is. They seem to think that that game has done really well, and like, it has. But it wouldn't have if not for your fan base. CD Projekt Red produced Witcher 3, and it did really, really well. And it was a good game. You go on Cyberpunk, it wasn't. They were up there with the game company list that people trust, and it's gone now. Larian are excited to make this game. If you watch any of their videos on YouTube, they are genuinely passionate and excited about what they're producing. The B-roll footage that we've used in this, at the end of that video, the guy turns around and says, the thing I was most scared to work with on this game is now the thing I am most proud of. And if that is not how you want games to be, I don't know what it is. Even with Payday 3 coming up, right? If you listen to what the developers are saying, they are excited to be working on the game. They're excited for what they're making. Gamers just want a game that you are excited to make, and if you're excited and passionate about it, then it will show in your work. You can't say that a AAA studio can't take the time to make it. You can't say a AAA studio doesn't have successful games, doesn't have an early access period where they can be successful at a large team of people or an IP. You can't say a AAA title doesn't have any of those, or a AAA company, sorry, doesn't have access to all those. Larian had to fight to get Baldurs Gate 3. They weren't just given it. They had to fight to get that because there was a load of folk wanted to make Baldurs Gate 3. And it was because of Divinity 2 that they got it. And they're going to make something exceptional here. They're going to make something that we have not played and haven't seen for a while. That is what you expect. That is what you want from a game studio. And for others to be attacking it and saying no. Like, it's not unrealistic for us to want this. It's not unrealistic for this to be the new standard. Especially because we are the ones that decide the standards. If you have the option, right? And it's a genius move. It's a great move by Larian to turn around and go, you know what? We've actually finished developing the game on PC. We're going to release it early. Do you know when they were due to release it? The same fucking time as Starfield. The same time. Starfield and Baldur's Gate are not the same. It's sci-fi against fantasy. But the game genre is the same. And most people are probably going to... or there's going to be some substantial crossover between the two. If you release it at the same time, one of them is losing out. And one of them is an already established company that people would be excited for another RPG coming out of. Larian might have lost out on that. They've moved it instead. If I only have money to buy one game, out of the two of them, I'm going Baldur's Gate. Because everything from scope to gameplay, just all of it, screams, this is the choice to make. So if we as gamers make Baldur's Gate 3 the choice, we set the standard. That's it. It's not game companies. You can't, if we turn and go, this is it, this is peak RPG right here, you guys should be making something like this. And then they go, no, we're going to make this instead. We're going to make Skyrim. We're going to make something like that. And you're going to be happy with it. We won't be. I mean, it doesn't work like that. They can't turn and say, here's what you're getting and you'll be happy with it. Because we've dealt with that for too long. I keep seeing people buying the FIFA games who are never happy with them. They always say the same stuff about how it's scripted, how it's dog shit, but they still play it. They still say it's an awful game they're not getting next year's. Then they get next year's. People said the same thing with Call of Duty about how they're terrible nowadays. They're not getting the next one. And the player base is dropping for that game. Because they're giving us something and expecting us to be happy with it. And I don't think we need to. I think when it's coming down to a decision as to what is the industry standard for something. When something like this comes along, right? Something genuinely special. We should be jumping at it. And I might be completely wrong. I might be. And if I am, I will be disappointed. Like I am with a lot of games when we play them. But 2 years of making sure that this game works. 6 years of making sure that it's what we want. And going into minute details like making the people you're near talk about you. Things you've done. So what you do in the world will be visible to you. It will be immersive to you. Like, shit. We don't get enough like that. So, yeah. This guy's tweets, viable for an indie studio. We should not hold indie studios to the same caliber as AAAs. We should be holding AAA titles to the same standards as each other. If one of them produces something exceptional and someone tries to produce something else in that genre, we should be holding them to that standard. Not accepting that, you know what, that was just a one-off. Because that lets them get away with creating mediocrity that we should be accepting of. And I, for one, as a gamer, don't want to be accepting of mediocrity. I want something fun. I want something great. And studios are capable of it. But someone in companies seems to think that we're all idiots and we should be happy to just get shit on a plate that they'll fix later. I'm quite happy to spend my money on a game like this. I'm happy to give Larian my money. Their track record is good. This is going to be the same. I'm happy to give them my money. I already have. I already have the game bought for when this game gets released. They're making sure that we have a good, fun game to play, rather than giving us something that they'll just fix at a later date. Frankly, I'm kind of fed up of being beta testers for most of these companies. You should be too. Anyway, if you made it this far in the video, I appreciate you joining us, listening to me rant a little bit. And as a gentle reminder from the start of the video that we do stream on here. So like, subscribe to the video, and feel free to join us when we do stream this game with Steve. Until then, you have a good one, and we will see you at the next one.